Welcome everyone to my Weird Wednesday stream where we are playing unusual openings here in Blitz and Classical Chess. Get the window capture up. Looks like the internet is fixed. We had a major outage here in my local area, I guess, with the cable internet. So that's what happened yesterday, in case you were wondering. UPC cable modem or internet went down for the whole day. Basically, it was out until about 8 o'clock last night. So not only destroying my stream, but making internet basically inaccessible for almost the whole night. But they did fix it eventually, and we're back up today. So hopefully the stream will run smoothly. Several people said happy stream anniversary. I'm not sure which day I actually did my first stream on lichess last year. Maybe Jeroen would remember, but I don't even know if he was watching that early in the beginning of February. But I did a few streams on ICC before I started on lichess. So I'm not sure technically when my anniversary of streaming was, but it was in around the 1st of February. So we'll for the sake of convenience, we'll call it February 1st, 2016, 2017, 1 year anniversary. So thank you, everybody. And we're going to get started here. We've got challenges from Suvik, Plukro, Apathetos, GCEW, Tactical Destroyer. Greg Moore, thank you. And thanks to anybody who's supported the stream with donations via PayPal. Greg, I have to get your name up there in the list. We have... Today, let me see. Today we woke up early, so what I wanted to say was I'm very awake. I usually didn't wake up so early, have my coffee, I'm all set. So I even played a few games you might have seen before we got started. So usually when I'm starting the stream, these are the first games I've played. What I'm trying to say is I've played a couple games already, so I'm not half asleep like I might be sometimes when I start the stream. Anyway, let's get started. Suvik. Okay, so I said Weird Wednesday. I mean it. We've got to play unusual openings. I like to play the Alekhine's Defense. It's not really part of my normal repertoire. We'll see me occasionally play it on the regular stream, but in simuls, actually. More often in simuls. Because I like to play different stuff in the simuls. But this is not an opening I would trust myself to play very often in a tournament game. Suvik played knight to c3 though. And one good book that I recommend is Dynamic Chess Strategy by Mihai Shuba. Shuba did annotate, I think, one game where he played against a Hungarian Grandmaster, Grosspeter, and Grosspeter Attila, and I think that game is annotated in Shuba's Dynamic Chess Strategy. I mean, basically, I don't really think that knight c3 is a critical test of knight f6, but it really depends on what white does here. Blue Crow, no, I mean, there's no reason the stream should drop. They spent 8 hours repairing the UPC internet, in my local area yesterday, so it's not a problem on my end. But the problem is this e takes d. Not a problem, just that the game that Shuba analyzes with Grosspeter, I think there's e5, and then Shuba plays knight d7, which is much more dynamic than the symmetrical d4. But in any case, there's also knight e4, which is a line that's really dynamic for black. But e takes d, I think I would argue, is the better move for white. If you do play it, I mean, I think this is the way you should play it with e takes d. But this move is a non-theoretical move that you do run across from time to time. Generally speaking, the queen is fairly stable on d5 here, so I always think of this as kind of developing a piece for me. So generally speaking, bishop c4 is played almost universally in this position. Of course, white has other options. You can play knight f3 or d4. But I feel like knight takes d5 is a slight inaccuracy. White has no opening advantage here. Nevertheless, he hasn't really created any weaknesses, so he's not really worse. Now, an interesting move, c4, which I honestly don't recall facing. That's probably okay for white, I want to say. This move is probably okay. However, there's some complications. I can play queen e4 check, and in the event of queen e4 check, knight e2 looks kind of awkward for white. And then the second possibility is bishop e2, queen takes g2, bishop f3, sacrificing a pawn for white, which objectively doesn't really look sound. So, and then there's the third possibility of queen e4 check, queen e2, which actually might be the safest for white. And in that case, I guess I'd have to trade into an equal ending. So the other possibilities are interesting. Queen e6 check, a less committal kind of check. Probably the more safe move. Then there's like just not putting the queen on the e-file at all. I could play as passively as queen d8. Queen d6 looks like a good move. This is a default. Queen e5 check is not as good because it'll get hit by like d4. You could even play queen a5, I'm sure, here. Like a normal sort of Scandinavian. But the position that I would have expected white to do like knight e2 probably and revolve the other knight into c3, but c4 is interesting. Saddest Troll, welcome. So I'm spending all my time here just trying to get a handle on what's going on, because this is not a position I ever analyzed. It's pretty easy to play, but we can make a big decision at this moment, really. How our entire setup is going to be based on where we put our queen. So queen d6 and queen e6 check at this point are my main candidate moves. Queen a5, and I don't think queen e4 check is... queen e4 check looks kind of risky, honestly. You could play knight e2 or queen e2. I'd be happy to grab a pawn after bishop e2. On the other hand, queen d6, d4. Queen d6 gets in the way of my bishop. Then again, queen e6 check also interferes with natural development. Queen d8, perfectly good. Queen a5. Alright. I don't like queen a5. Maybe queen d6 after all is best. Let's try a different plan here. I mean, it's a problem with like blocking the bishop on f8. I can play g6, c5, e5. Queen c6 is an awkward square. I mean, it's just interfering with the knight's best development on c6 in some lines and blocking the c-pawn. You could play anything, you could play queen f5 if you want to. Queen f5 I didn't consider. I mean, it's a totally playable move. But I took a lot of time here just to illustrate that there's a lot to think about in even such a simple position. People here on lichess that play a lot of bullet chess and whatnot tend to just move very instantly and very quickly. I'm trying to focus more on like strategic thinking and trying to play a little deeper. So, I mean, these games are basically like preparation for me for long tournament games, and in that respect, I like to use all my time wherever possible. So, if I want to play bullet chess, that would be a different activity. But I want to use all my time. I want to try to think as deeply as I can about the positions, get as much out of it as we can. But I think the Suvix opening is reasonable. You'll probably find this in some footnote in in some opening books or something. You know, I mean, it's not that bad for white. But there's a lot of better ways to play against the Alekhines defense, and so that's the only problem. White doesn't really have an advantage. I don't think that white is worse. I bet that the engine is probably cranking out something around like 0.00 right about now. I would think be around dead equal, more or less. If anybody was better, it would probably be black, because White's extended himself a little bit, you know, with a c4 and then maybe d4. Knight f3. I thought the d4 is the most natural move there, when I was probably going to play e5. Knight f3 stops e5. No, it doesn't stop e5. Well, he would have queen e2. Probably not a good move. e5 still may be the best move. But there's something to be said for c5. This for me is more natural because it's more like a Sicilian defense. And it is a wing pawn, so in the event of e5, d4, it reaches like a totally symmetrical structure. Now I have something a little more dynamic. But maybe objectively, like e5, more fundamental. h3 is too slow. You're letting me get a huge grip on d4. Now black is better. Black has the advantage after anchoring this control of d4. Now I prefer black all day long here. His h3 to stop bishop g4, I presume, but there are other things going on in the position. Now bishop b2 is coming, so it's a little awkward for me to develop. Like, I can't play g6, which would be ideal. I've basically got a Marazzi type of setup now after e5, which means that I put all my pawns primarily, you know, the pawn chain is based on dark squares, and therefore my dark square bishop will be bad. That's the price I have to pay for having like a greater control of the center. I am Minky. What's up, guys? Sort of anniversary stream here. I didn't think about it that way going in, but it's been a year since I started streaming here on lichess. So bishop e2. I don't want to play f6 if I don't have to. You know, that's yet another pawn on dark squares. And what I want to do is try to keep the white squares under control. You know, this white square bishop is very important for me. So I don't want him to be traded off in most situations. This piece is going to defend the white squares that my pawns are incapable of defending. Obviously, this is an interesting move, queen c2, stopping bishop f5, which would have been ideal, I guess. I could play f5 and get really aggressive. I think it's sort of justified. Sort of justified has been called. I think this is actually justified. Rather than play some routine move, I'm going to think a little bit outside the box here, play aggressively, fight for some white square control. I think not giving up all these white squares to this diagonal that the queen's on. Much more aggressive than, say, routinely playing like bishop e6. And this allows me to play bishop f6, activate this bad bishop. Now he's castled queenside. This will sharpen the game. But yeah, this is going to sharpen the play. But what about the center here? If I play like e4, white's position is starting to look really dubious. I think he's just neglected the center too much. You know, it's nice to castle queenside and try to play sharply and maybe create a double-edged situation to attack on opposite sides. But I think that the bottom line is that white has developed his pieces but neglected basic, like, fundamental control of the center. Sorry, guys. E4. So knight G1. I mean, knight E1 looks a little better. Control D3 and kind of try to punch through. I have knight B4. He has queen B1 in that instance. So maybe bishop E6. This entails sacrificing a pawn, but I have a massive compensation. I mean, I'm not really. I'm more worried about him breaking in the center than I am about him like trying to steal my G7 pawn. To be perfectly honest. Playing D4. Well, it just loses out of hand. I mean, D3 was interesting, but there I could castle. I could play knight B4 and maybe castle queenside. D3, knight B4, queen B1. Alright, I'm about to lose on time. People tend to get nervous when they see the clock get down. Take some practice to play with the increment, and against people getting low on time, it's sometimes, I think it sometimes makes people freak out. Alexander Ivanov, one of my big competitors when I was still living in the United States, in my region, was the player who always got in really ridiculous time pressure. And what often happened was that people just like impaled themselves. You know, that they see his clock getting really ridiculously low, and they start to like get nervous and in his time pressure and panic. And it's just a pattern that I would see again and again and again. These players who are good and have a tendency, like Walter Brown, Alexander Ivanov, these are Americans that I know, but this type of player exists everywhere. Time pressure addicts who are strong players, like I'm doing here. 9 out of 10 times the other player like panics in their time pressure and just implodes. So the best thing to do is just try to keep making the best moves, especially with increment. I mean, you just can't play for time. So Suvik, he freaked out with D4. It would have been more reasonable to try to grab the pawn on G7 or play D3, as I mentioned. Now he resigned. Okay, so you should have played D4, Suvik, straight away. I mean, it's totally normal. Looks like a totally normal position. Blue Crow, thank you for the wishes about the anniversary of 1 year streaming here. Blue Crow, I've got to play unusual openings today. So with that in mind, we'll play one of my favorites, the Saragossa opening. The problem with the Saragossa opening is that it does transpose to other openings most often. Last time I played this was against Grandmaster Proashka Peter about 7 or 8 years ago, and it transposed into a kind of London system. Actually, someone strong played this recently. I don't remember where it was. Maybe in the World Rapid Championship. I saw a game, a strong GM playing white, and the game was C3, E5, D4. That's kind of one thing like we can do is like a reversed Caro-Kann. And I've always joked about the time that I tried to play. I tried to play this against a Smith-Morra player, but the guy wouldn't cooperate, the Serbian FIDE master. I wanted to play e5 so I could play c4 and play, you know, a tempo down against the Smith-Morra. c3, e5, c4, d5. But my opponent didn't cooperate and played f5, but I beat him anyway. c3, f5. c3 is not a bad variation against the Dutch. All right, now let's see what we can do here. Well, I don't know. I don't really have much better than transposing to some kind of queen pawn opening. You can play a passive, like, modern, but I mean, I'm normally transposing to some kind of queen pawn game. c3 fits in with several different setups that white can play. The London system, the Tory attack. You could even play a kind of Kali system. I could play knight d2 if I wanted to. Can I link you to something on YouTube? Blue Crow, bishop a6. That's a creative move. Not entirely bad, I would suppose. Makes some sense. All right. Well, let's do something. Bishop g5. You know what? c3 is kind of a slow move. So if I didn't have that in, I would say I'd have a really great, you know, position. But c3 is kind of a slow move. So we're playing a Tory attack with c3 and bishop a6 inserted. And by the way, like d4, knight f6, knight f3, b6, I played once with black. It's not that good. It's kind of like that. Bishop h4, much more aggressive than like bishop f4. I'm not really sure how to handle that knight on e4. Typically, you know, sometimes white can play like knight fd2, but I think not in this position. It doesn't make sense. Black would have like g5. I mean, we should just play routinely. I'm trying to delay this e3. The other thing I could have done would have been to play bishop f4 and like g3 and bishop g2, but objectively, you know, I don't think that this London setup with g3 makes a lot of sense. I don't think that g3, bishop g2, it's kind of a dead diagonal. Anyway, I'm not really expecting an opening advantage here. Now, knight d6, that's very aggressive, Blue Crow. You know, you're kind of like behind in space and development, and avoiding exchanges normally would be against the rules of basic principles. But in this case, maybe you're justified somehow. Perhaps there's some justification. I don't want to play like e3 and just let him exchange on his terms. And he has knight f5. That's the justification that I was talking about. So I guess it's pretty reasonable for black. Feels like this should be good for white somehow, but I don't really know. This bishop a6 is extremely annoying. I don't want to play routinely. I'm running out of time. All right. Think outside the box. I don't know, guys. If knight f5, I could even play bishop f4 now, you know, so I'm not sure that he wants to do that. On the other hand, I'm making it easier for him to develop. Now he can play e6 where he couldn't before. What else could I have done? Maybe I could play knight e5. I could have played knight e5, then f6, queen a4 check, c6. No, he actually has this funny defense, bishop b5. So queen a4 check is nothing. Evil Gwyn. Welcome everybody to my stream. It's Weird Wednesday, so we're trying to play some unusual openings. Blue Crow helping me out here with a very strange early deployment of the bishop on a6. One way we could try to take advantage of it would be to play a4, a5 on the queen side. But I think that, you know, that's not the first priority as far as development is concerned. But an interesting idea. Black can't meet a4, a5, which is a typical London system kind of plan, with a6 or a5, as would be like normal f6. A lot of white square weaknesses in black's position now. Looking like a lot of pawns on dark squares and a lot of weaknesses on white squares because this bishop is out here on a6. With that guy out there on a6. We try to exploit the white squares. I could castle queenside. Wow, king f7. All right. Now it's possible to take either way. With the rook or with the king, that is. Either way, I lose my right to castle kingside, but I decided we can castle queenside first of all, or we could even like manually castle with king e2, rook e1, king f1. So black's development is behind. I think white is slightly better, despite the weird king. I mean, castling queenside is obviously the most sensible thing now. And the e6, so he's trying to keep the position kind of under control. Alright, let's go. Castling queenside does occur sometimes in things like the London system, Tory attack, but you know, sometimes it just goes totally awry. Like, there was a game from last year, Karyakin Adams in a London system, where like Karyakin just got manhandled and just brutally destroyed, trying to castle queenside against Adams in a London system. You're kind of going against the grain, you know, when you're castling queenside in enclosed queen pawn openings in general. So there are exceptional positions where it's good, but more like, you know, special systems like Mark Hebden plays knight c3 type setups, and if you don't play c4, it's a little bit easier, you know. Well, that's the case here as well. Okay, so I guess we're going with this one. Again, we're short of time, but I like our game. The e6 pawn is very weak. I think that Blue Crow made a very fundamental mistake, exchanging off his strong point on d5. And now it's dangerous for black, this situation. Clearly we could sacrifice a piece, or not. Clearly not clear. It's clearly not clear if we can sacrifice a piece. Kind of transparent what I'm doing here, but I was getting a little bit low on time. Blue Crow as well. But now he's lost. Cheapo. Got to pay attention to the weak point there on e6. Now, he can play on, though. Probably a forced mate around here somewhere. I don't see it, per se. I think I might have had a forced mate there. I just didn't see the last move. This king hiding on h6, going back and forth from g6 to h6 in one line after knight h4 check, king takes g5, f4 check, king h6, knight f5 check, king g6, queen g4 check, king f7. I just saw him getting away. Okay, not really a traditional game there, Blue Crow. But you tried to create something interesting, which was okay, but just went a little too far by, I think, not good giving up the strong point on e5, you know. Unless you could trade queens or something like that, then it would be fine. Apathetos, this is rated, right? Okay. Rated game, so we'll try to play some unusual opening that's not really too over the top. All right, so let's play a3. A good transpositional move, played by Adolf Anderssen, of course, in the infamous match against Morphy. So the idea existed a good 100 years ago. A3 is a useful move in many positions. And also we can transpose to a prie variation. Eric Prie, the French GM, did a survey in New in Chess some years ago, New in Chess yearbook, where he's advocating a kind of London system type of setup, usually with A3 being included. Although here I'm not sure if I want to play bishop f4 or not. Certainly other possibilities. This is kind of an amorphous position. Apathetos just makes instant moves in general, which I tried to discourage people from doing here on the stream. It's not an unreasonable setup, g6 and d5. Guys, yeah, I do ask people not to play rated games. I don't know why. He said it was an accident, but Deli Bali also challenged me to rated, and I'd like to ask him to rescind that challenge me to unrated. If anyone has any comments or questions, feel free to ask. Ask any questions you'd like. I'm going to play with the bishop inside the pawn chain here. I think equally viable to play like bishop f4, bishop g5. I thought that black will play knight e7. Actually, now I feel like an idiot. Okay, I guess he can't play knight e7 because bishop f6 is too awkward. Bishop g5 was a good move. He has to play f6 then. His position looks a little strange, so I guess I should have done bishop g5. Okay. He could also play queen d7. No, he has to play f6, and it looks pretty bizarre. Okay, that was a mistake. I should play bishop g5. Never mind. I mean, he could play bishop g5, knight e7, bishop f6, rook g8, but it looks really bad for black. A lot of weaknesses. Is there no setting to only accept casual challenges or something? Digital player, there is a setting to do that, but then I have to like remember to turn it off every time I log on and like when I'm not streaming and stuff. So yeah, there's absolutely, I think there is a setting to do that, but it's just kind of inconvenient to have to like keep remembering to turn it on and off. What else was I gonna say? Not a big deal though. So it's a bit weird what black's doing here by playing e6 and g6. And now he's got a lot of pawns on white squares. That means a bad white square bishop and some dark square weaknesses. No, actually, I shouldn't play knight c3 automatically here. I could also play maybe like b3, bishop b2. Or knight b2, the Cyprian Nanu attack. Romanian Grandmaster Nanu played very, very early, like d4, knight f3, knight d2, followed by b4 against me, and it really took me by surprise, I have to admit. I'm going to open it up now. He's wasted so many tempi with his pawns that I don't mind losing a move myself. a3 not very relevant, but then again neither is a6 in this position, so it pretty much balances out. Kind of a battle for tempi here. I'd rather keep the tension if I can do it. Not clear if bishop d3 might be better. It's not going to matter if he takes on c4. I'm going to lose the tempo, having to recapture anyway. So, in many situations, it doesn't really matter if you put the bishop on d3 or c4 or d3 or e2. Yeah, man, I had that massive internet outage until late in the evening yesterday. But it's the first time in months. I don't know. I can't remember. Sometimes when I was playing a lot of online poker, I would lose significant sums of money. But I do have a backup, but it's just a mobile internet, so it's not the greatest. It's not good enough connection with the mobile internet to do the stream. Barely good enough to do anything, actually. Queen b6 is a very strange move by black. It's a very strange move. Okay, let's just, yeah, queen. We picked up our queen by accident there. So I don't know what this really does. I mean, he's putting a little pressure on d4. I could certainly play c5. I could see computers going for c5, but then I'm kind of like changing my whole plan, committing to a pawn structure. I like keeping the tension here and keeping my options open. It's a little harder for the other side to play when you keep tension in the position. You make them have more things to think about. If I fix the structure, I take pressure off of d5, and although I gain space, I feel like I lose a lot of flexibility. So let's keep the tension in the position. He's also attacking my b2 pawn, obviously. So kind of maybe his idea is to tie down my bishop on c1 as well as attack d4, but it seems like a random move. And Epithetios moves too quickly. He's actually taken a little bit of time here suddenly, which has not been the case. Epithetios only 3 beers. That's not too many. That's no excuse. Unless you never drink alcohol, in that case it could be a lot. I wanted to open the window, get some oxygen going in here, but it's raining, of course. It's just constantly cloudy and bad weather. It's been like the coldest, most dismal winter ever since I've been living here in Budapest. I could open the window just for a second, maybe, despite the rain. Just to let a little bit of oxygen, a little oxygen in the room. I feel kind of dizzy. Okay, h6. It's pretty random. Leaving your king in the center here. The problem with exchanging on d5, I would open up his bad bishop. Every time you make a move, you got to think about what you're doing for the opponent's pieces. A lot of people just think about what they're doing for their pieces. And okay, let's make another constructive move, rook e1. Not really a big plan for me here. Now he's castled. He has maybe rook d8 to put pressure on my center. This kind of position for me really requires more time. I mean, it's extremely closed. I just want to maximize the mobility of my pieces without helping him, you know, without mobilizing his bishop on c8, without giving him a good square for his knight on c6. I mean, if I take on d5, I give him a good square for his knight on c6, for example. So I'm trying to improve my position without improving his. Bishop f1 is a move. It improves the coordination of my pieces just a little bit. He can't really do very much here. Epithetos, you're kind of... Concentrate on the game, man. There's a move that we're talking about. What can black do? Its difficulty has less space, and this is the kind of non-constructive move that he's reduced to. I mean, it would be better maybe knight d7, because the bishop d7, it doesn't really have any constructive value on d7. Now we have knight e5. It doesn't do anything concrete. You know, I could play for like e takes d, c takes d, c5 with the queenside majority. White has a wealth of good moves. I don't know. I don't want to just like weaken my position. Three minutes to 2. White's clearly better. Black doesn't really have any useful moves at all. I mean, it's tempting to play b4, but it's very weakening for white, this b4. And I prefer not to make too many pawn moves. Sometimes I have a tendency to do that, and this reminds me of a game I played against a weaker master like a few months ago, where he played a lot of like random sort of like useless moves, and I just kind of overextended myself on both sides. And I want to be trying to play like constructive moves without weakening myself too much. Rook b1, defending the b2 pawn. That will give me some more flexibility. In the event of moving this bishop somewhere, I don't have to worry about problems with queen takes b2. The other move I was thinking about was queen c2, but that could result in bishop takes d4, although that's probably not good. I mean, I think this move is also perfectly valid, queen c2. He's keeping the tension as well. Rook b1, kind of debatable though. I'm sure that if this was a long game, I would have taken more time to find something more concrete. You know, rook b1, it's just like a slight improving move. But I'm sure there's something better for white. I'm certain it's not the best move, but it's non-committal and slightly improves my position. I'm trying to get him to make a bad move, you know, to give up his center, to make more pawn weaknesses. What can he do here that improves his position? It seems like these three beers make positions so closed. Beers cause constipation. That's not typically the effect that you normally get. You know, it's usually the opposite, that beers would cause things to kind of open up, both literally and figuratively. You would think like the beers would make you play looser and more crazy. The rook b1 could help me with a queenside majority type of thing as well. So that's an option. A positional strategy of like ED, CD, C5, followed by the avalanche, B4, A4, B5. Absolutely viable positional plan for white. Bishop E8 is best. I'm certain that's the best move for black, unless it loses by force somehow. Now I can play bishop f4. Sure, that's a reasonable approach. Let's see, ED, CD, C5, bishop f4. Problem with bishop f4 might be that at some point get some counterplay. At some point he gets some counterplay by making a decision. No, I think he had to play e takes d and then knight f5, and that was an idea that was hanging out for a while in this position, but now it's more or less lost for black, I think. Maybe not quite lost. Though he had d takes e there? Nah, I don't know. But I think now it's... Well, that's not good. That's not good. We won the battle of the tension. Had to play, had to try something else. Giving up the center at some point would have been necessary, I guess, for Mr. Epithetos. Now everything's working smoothly. We don't have to rush with grabbing the exchange, I think. All our pieces are good. We're up a figure. And the battle of the tension was successful. So this way we win more for our money. More for our money. Let's get all the pieces in the game. Now we're up quite a bit of material. Another piece hanging. So, well, he had to give up the tension at some point there with d takes e and try to play that position. It's not that bad, actually. It didn't look that bad to play d takes e, knight takes e4, knight f5. You have a little bit of counterplay against the... a tiny bit of counterplay. I can get material back here. Yeah, he has a tiny bit of counterplay against Mr. Pawn on d4. with like knight f5, bishop on g7, queen on b6, despite giving up the center. He hung all his pieces. That's usually a problem. All right, man. It was it was like kind of ugly at the end, but interesting to a point. That is. All right, self-immolation. Mule Skinner, Tactical Destroyer, Constant Change, Ikorwan, Raging Tiger, Senalitza, and M47, who I haven't seen in a long time. Good to see you. So I've got some oxygen going on in here. I feel that the oxygen definitely makes a little bit of a beneficial difference. And sometimes I don't open the window for like days because it's been so cold. Mule Skinner. I already played the Alekhines defense, and I got my coffee already this morning. Woke up early. Mule Skinner likes closed games, so I'd prefer to get something kind of dynamic. But I don't want to repeat the same openings over and over again. We already played knight f6. We can play the knight f6 Scandinavian, but I've done that many times against him before. I've also played the Owens defense against him. Of course, we're gonna have to repeat openings at some point. Let's play the Nimzovich defense. I'm sure I've played this against Mule Skinner before. Horrific or not horrific? It was pretty horrific. Yeah, Epithetos, I think he didn't play his best game. E4 knight c6. We could transpose to e4 e5. If you want to be truly in the vein of weird openings, you can play my bishop b5. Not that I invented it, but I invented it just like I wasn't, the first to invent it. So I guess in the spirit of playing something unusual here, well, knight f6 just isn't good because of e5. It's a bad Alekhine. So problem is everybody plays knight f3. Nobody ever lets me play like the main line of the Nimzovich after d4, d5, which would be my intention. And this is almost like a standard opening for me. I do play quite frequently in my simuls, and even on the normal stream, sometimes d6. I know that f5 is a move here, totally Shirazi-like, absurd, delayed Fred. But in the interest of playing something original, let's play like g6. Epithetos, why are you like sending links? Is that a link to a game I played just now? That dude you're just mentioning was one of the last opponents I played right before the stream. This is kind of unusual modern defense with my knight on c6 very early. But I did often incorporate bishop g7 into variations where I play the modern defense. White can play d5, and it's not clear how black would respond with knight e5 or knight b8. But a lot of argument as to whether, a lot of arguments could be made whether d5 is a good move or just kind of overextending the pawn chain. I think it's okay, but white would have to play very accurately after that. Okay, I think I've had games with Suvik. I think I had a game, maybe 2 games with Suvik in this exact type of position. We're transposing to like pretty much like a standard kind of c3 against the modern defense type position after d6. f5 is fun but basically busted. You know, the idea would be if you play f5, I think what you're kind of hoping for is maybe like pawn takes f5, knight h6, and like being able to recapture on f5 in a constructive way. I've also seen f5, e takes f5, d5. But I mean, even f5, e5 has to be good for white, so f5 is not really a good idea. Yeah, against Muleskinner, I don't know if I had this. I definitely had it against Suvik. Bishop b5, bishop d7 is the most solid. I got into kind of trouble against Suvik when I let him double my pawns on c6 not that long ago. One of the stream games here, so maybe we'll play correctly, so to speak, with bishop d7. I don't really like exchanging pieces, but I am black. I have slightly less space. d5 would be a bad move for white. Fundamentally, I think weakening his pawn chain. So this is a little bit safer than anything provocative I've done in the past, like knight f6. I had a game with, as I said, Suvik, who like was able to exchange on c6 and then play at some point like knight b3, knight d2, b3, knight a5, and it was really unpleasant for me. That position was slightly better for white when white was able to double my pawns and establish a piece on a5. So it's much safer to not allow the doubled pawns. Music Dan, thank you for the host. Castles. But generally speaking, the bishop doesn't go to b5 in these kind of positions. It's supposed to go to like d3 and just secure the e4 pawn. Now we have a decision to make whether to play e5. I mean, I think that black's whole structure is King's Indian in style. Is the only really viable formation for black at this point. It would be to play e5. Just a question of when. When you play the Nimzovich, you don't have any kind of stock in the center in terms of like a strong point. So sometimes it's d5 if you play move 2 d5, but sometimes it's e5. Miles like to play the Nimzovich with d6 and sometimes e5. The traditional Nimzovich is more like a French type of pawn structure with d5 and e6. So, okay, one thing we have to ask ourselves, like if we play knight f6, do we want to play knight f6 and then e5? What about e5? If I play knight f6 e5, it kind of looks like a problem. Pawn takes pawn. Pawn takes pawn, but we have knight takes e5. His bishop's hanging on b5. Kind of classic tactic. Speaking of Nimzovich. So it's okay to play knight f6, but is that where I want my knight? You know, if I'm going to play a structure with e5, is it making the most sense to play it with my knight on f6 or not? If I play knight f6, basically, let's say he plays rook e1. Now, is he threatening e5 after something like castles? He's still not really threatening e5. Yes, he is, because after I castle e5, pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn, knight takes e5, rook takes e5, bishop takes b5, his queen's hanging. Queen takes, rook takes b5, rook d1, mate. So we still have the possibility to capture on e5 in that line, but objectively, you know, maybe it's simpler to just play e5 straight away. think I like it. I like the knight f6, and later if I play e5, I can go for knight h5, knight f4. It's basically a King's Indian. You guys follow that? Is it complicated enough? That's what we're thinking about. I'm trying to give you a glimpse of what I'm thinking about. Rook e1, e5. Drops a pawn for me. Well, or not. I can play actually, I called it a King's Indian, but this is more like a Steinitz Roy Lopez than a King's Indian. Though they are kind of interchangeable in some strategic sense. It's not correct to call it a King's Indian, because white hasn't played c4. I can play e5, bishop takes, pawn takes, etc., etc. But I think it's best to wait one more move before I commit myself one way or the other. I just spent a lot of time talking about e5, d takes e5, d takes e5, knight takes e5, and how that's okay for black. So I don't have to fear this. If he had e5, it would really disorientate all my pieces and cause a lot of chaos. So if he doesn't have e5, life is okay. Now he's threatening to create the chaos again. So I think this is the moment of truth, basically. It's now or never for e5. We have to calculate again. Bishop takes c6, bishop takes c6, pawn takes e5, pawn takes e5, knight takes e5. Bishop takes e4. And life is okay, because he's pinned along the file. This could be a transposition to some kind of. This could be a theoretical. Not really theoretical, but this could theoretically be a variation in the Steinitz Lopez. Getting your resume done. Well, it's good. Somebody here is going to go to work. Knight f1 now. The center, there's a lot of tension in the center with the knight f1. I can play knight takes d4. That's simplifying. It's probably the best. But he plays knight takes d4, pawn takes. It's not a very exciting position after knight takes d4. But I mean, I have less space here, you know. I mean, fundamentally, liquidating, trading some pieces is what you want to do when you're black. You have like slightly less space. But objectively, if this was a tournament game, I might not opt for this against Mule Skinner, because if this opponent is 500 rating points lower than me, I probably would want to keep the pieces on the board. So sometimes the best move isn't the best move. That's what I'm saying, you know. That's what we're saying here. Sometimes the best move isn't the best practical move in a situation, you know. I'd love to sacrifice a piece here, but I just don't see how that's. I just don't see how it's gonna work, you know. We don't have enough compensation. 2 pawns for a piece. Pawn takes pawn, bishop moves somewhere, and then knight takes e4. I could win a third pawn. It's pretty wild. I guess I'd have to calculate, like, pawn takes pawn, bishop a4, knight takes e4, rook takes e4, pawn takes b2, bishop takes b2, bishop takes b2, rook b1, and then he's gonna like win my pawn on b7. So unless I have some kind of intermezzo there, just too fancy, too fancy. All right, I'm a little ahead in development in a sense here. White has the bigger center, but it looks a little bit like his development. First of all, his development is behind, and secondly, he can end up with a lot of pawns stuck on the wrong color. Like a bad bishop is what I'm saying. I think it's about equal, though. The true evaluation of this position is equal. The piece sacrifice was very unclear, probably good for white. Although it's entirely possible that I had something better there I missed. Now d5, I might no good place to go with the knight. And with that in mind, we need an alternate strategy. Benoni. I'm going into the land of the Benoni. Trying to fight against his center. Very good game by Muleskinner so far. Absolutely correct. We need to fight against that center, though. I cannot let him just settle in, with a space advantage. And he played this move. Wow. I didn't know Muleskinner was really the time winning on time kind of player, but it's like we have to be a little bit careful there. We almost flagged because I was calculating something. The problem was I had to spend a lot of time on calculation. Look how well he's playing this game. I feel like I'm playing a strong master. No mistakes. Yeah, I've been commentating too much. When I'm this low on time, I should just shut up and play. I thought queen g3 there. He could have sacked a piece if he played rook a7. I could trap his knight, but he sacks a piece for 3 pawns. You know, so I'm not sure that was really good. Now he's lost. What a game, man. Played a tremendous game, Yul Skinner. Got me in very, very bad time pressure. Whoa, I thought I lost some time. I freaked out. Oh, you resigned after f4. Why resign? Well, you're down a piece, but you do have a chance with those connected pass pawns. I wouldn't resign in that moment, you know. Like, it's your last hope. I think you should go with it, you know. Very, very, very tough fight, man. Well played game. You had a draw, you know. He has a draw by repetition, and he didn't take it. There's no defense here other than allowing a draw by repetition for me. If I play king f8, maybe I missed something. No, that's mate in 2. You know, if I play king f8 or king h8, it's mate in 2. So I have to play king g8. He has this draw. Oh, there was one variation, right? King g8. Instead, okay, knight h6 check. Right, so the point is, this was the trickiest line. Maybe I could have played king f8 here. But I was afraid of queen f6. But it's not actually a mate, so. Anyway, good game. Tactical Destroyer 5-5. We have to play a little faster though, especially against strong players. Tactical Destroyer's a master strength opponent, so I'm not going to get into that kind of time pressure. The theme of the day is unusual openings, so we're going to be faithful to our unusual openings. Play f4. I could play e4, and maybe we'll do that next game. We'll try to find an unusual line in the classical e4 opening, rather than just play unusual moves on move 1. Tactical Destroyer. Oh my god. Got some water coming in. That's why you don't open the windows when it's raining. Alright, Tactical Destroyer's got a timeout. I'm like, where's the water coming from? Right on my laptop. Not too much, though. I think we'll probably be okay. A Tactical Destroyer, I don't know, man. We'll give him 30 seconds more, and then we'll put him on timeout mode. He can wait until next game. We've got challenges from Constant Change, IK Corwin, Raging Tiger, Senelitsa, M47, Epithetos. I don't know if we'll get down that far to a second challenge for Epithetos. One question IQ test. I normally don't play 2 games of the same player, Epithetos, on the same stream. Yesterday was an exception, or whenever that was. So I prefer to let different players play. Let's abort this game. I don't know where Tactical Destroyer went. Alright, we're going to play Constant Change. Guys, today's Weird Wednesday, so I'm playing unusual openings. Don't let me forget to accept if Tactical Destroyer comes back. I'm sure you could get like an underwater laptop. E4. What are we going to do? Unusual openings. Let's try something fun. This is the Sicilian defense. Not so unusual. We'll try to vary, though, like next move. try to play something unusual on move 2. Connectivity looks very good. So here I think I've played Queen C7 quite a bit. That doesn't really qualify anymore. That's something I've been playing on a regular basis. So I thought we could play something really crazy. Queen A5. This is not something I play on a regular basis. Probably most effective against the C3 Sicilian, honestly. That you do see on occasion. After C3, Queen A5. But the idea is pretty much the same here. I mean, we're trying to stop D4. See if we can't trip white up a little bit with Queen A5 early. The second game with constant change in an hour, no? Constant change. Dude, why would you challenge me again, man? I really played you already? Alright. Constant change, that's a weird thing to do. Why would you challenge me to a second game? How could he be that far up the list if I already played him? That doesn't even make sense. I don't understand how he could be that high on the list if I had already played him. Alright, well, sorry about that, guys. I just didn't think he could possibly be that high on the list if I already played him. But Constant Change should know better than to do that. I only have time for like 10 games, dude. And I really shouldn't play the same player in the first several games. I don't know why you're challenging me to a second game. That's not something you should do. Anyway, Bishop B4 here. I was watching his challenge count. It seems like it was a minute after I challenged him before my challenge showed up. Why did I not remember that I had already played him? What was the game that I played against him? I don't remember, guys. What was the game I played against him already? I don't recall now. Why I'm spacing on this. I was black? I don't remember now. Why can't I recall that? Which game did I play him? He's developed a habit of doing that, Arwen Gold. Arwen Gold, are you on the stream here on a regular basis? Because I don't recall playing 2 games with Constant Change at all in recent history. And he certainly never like re-challenged me like right away after playing the first game. Maybe at the end of the stream or something. Constant Change says no, I haven't played. So I'm totally confused. Like, who's accusing Constant Change of playing? It's Arwen Gold. Okay. Arwen Gold, you're making up stuff about Constant Change. What is this? Some kind of like rivalry or something? You're totally freaking me out. You made me like start to believe alternative facts. And yeah, okay. I don't know what the dude is doing. All right, we'll give him a timeout because he's obviously a troublemaker. Confusing me, making up alternative facts, and just generally confusing everybody. You have any enemies you know of, Constant Change, that would like to make you look bad? Yeah, I'm Inky. I know this guy Arwen Gold. It's very strange. He started to make up alternative reality facts. But he got me to believe him. I was sitting and I was thinking, like, thinking, and I play constant change so much, but every day pretty much. But I believed him. I was like, oh yeah, maybe I did play him over. But then I was thinking over the games. I was like, which game was it? You know. And then it's like, oh yeah, well there wasn't one. That's why it's so confusing. So we end up in a weird kind of situation here. A little bit like a Queen B6 Sicilian. Yeah, I know, guys. I don't know why this what is it? Arwen? He was making strange accusations and confusing the whole issue. Anyway, I put him on timeout because that's not cool, man. Don't make up things. Castles. He broke my concentration completely. I was like spending the first minute of this game trying to figure out like what game I had already played with constant change. All right, let's play a6. Just go with the flow here. Sometimes I try to like be a perfectionist, and that's why I'm getting into really bad time pressure often. But there is no such thing as perfection at a time control like this, faster than, I don't know, 10 minutes games or 15-minute games. We can only play like reasonably correct chess. Guys, don't forget to check out my YouTube channel, Video Chess Training on YouTube. I upload all the streams, except yesterday, of course, which got mauled by my internet outage. But I upload all my streams usually to the YouTube channel. Again, Video Chess Training on YouTube. I also have independent videos there I'm making once a week. So usually Thursday or Friday I'll put up like some kind of instructional video. Various topics, various lengths. Don't know what the topic will be this week. Also, I do a simul on Sundays here on lichess, 6:30 p.m. every Sunday. Lately, it's been 20-player simuls because I'm playing a lot of team games on Sunday mornings. I'm kind of tired out by the evening, but I'm not gonna give up on the simuls. Is anyone following Gibraltar? I didn't have time with all my internet outage yesterday. I think I never had time to really check out what happened. Adams had lost to Vachier-Lagrave in a previous round. I don't think it was yesterday, was it? Was it the day before yesterday or yesterday? Adams lost. I know Naka was at the top, along with Vachier-Lagrave. Have you played Jerry on Chess Network? Have I played Jerry on Chess Network? Or you mean, have I played Jerry from... or Jerry, aka Chess Network Jerry. I don't know if I've ever played him online or not. There are various people that, you know, I don't know what his handle is, honestly, if I've played him online. But there is the likelihood that I did play him in a tournament game. I've talked about this before. It seems to be like in around the year 2000. I did play a guy who fits his description in a tournament in Philadelphia when he was like a high school kid, and I didn't win. And it was an upsetting game. I was paired way down. I was around like 2470, and he was probably 2100. And I remember that I was very disappointed. Whether I lost or drew has been kind of erased from my memory. Both results would have been bad. It was like first round or something, first or second round of a big tournament, and I was unable to win. I'm sure of that. But the actual game and the actual result of whether I lost or drew has kind of like been expunged from my memory. But one day we will get into the closet and find all the old games that I can't remember what happened. That probably was Jerry from the Chess, or Jerry Chess Network Jerry. Anyway, here, do we want to give up our dark squared bishop? I think in a vacuum, I don't want to give up my dark square bishop. A3, it's okay, but I don't think I get enough value for this bishop takes knight. Short and Adams drew. So Vacher, Legrave, and Nakamura must be near the top. But Short beat someone good, didn't he? Who was it that Short beat? I mean, Short beat a very strong player. I had the feeling. Do you guys remember? Is anybody following the Gibraltar? It must be near the end of the tournament now. It's like a 9. Is it more than 9 rounds? Is it 10? How many rounds is it? Is it like 10 or 11 or something? Nigel Short. Yeah, I'm having memory loss. You guys can feel free to send me some Ginkgo biloba. Or, I don't know, I need some kind of memory loss therapy. Getting old and senile. I used to have a perfect... okay, it was Caruana. Thank you. So Short crushed Caruana. It was a really, really nice game. I mean, it's debatable whether we want to call it crushed. You know, Caruana put up some resistance. Short outclassed him. It was just like really, really like, let's say vintage Nigel Short. Here we have an interesting possibility of playing h5. It's a very dynamic way of playing the game, but I like it. It's 10 rounds. Okay, so you know, most open tournaments are typically 9 rounds, and 10 rounds makes it a little more interesting. Constant Change played F3. H3 a little bit more aggressive, you know, giving him the option to play like F4. There are some questions about this. You know, here I have Bishop D6. Maybe that's why H3 is better. Typical Khan Sicilian formation for black. Bishop on C8 is totally buried once I play Bishop D6. So we're going to have to reorganize here. But we've induced pretty serious weakening in his position. So I think trading dark square bishops is a good strategy, and preventing F4 for the time being. Starting to put our pieces, pawns and whatnot, on dark. Not the only move, though. It's a little bit of a concession to trade pieces here. Maybe I should play for direct attack in retrospect. But I was getting kind of low on time. Yeah, I'm sort of regretting that I did that. Could play G5. G5 here. G5 is risky. Probably I should have played H4 first off. G5, leaving my king in the center. Looks kind of dicey. I think we're going to try to play, with the time situation, we're going to try to play solidly, relatively solidly. It's the Sicilian, and I've played H5, so solid is kind of, you know, not really what we're doing today, but But you don't have to jump off a cliff just because you played some risky moves, you know. Maybe it's time to tone it down a little bit here. And g5 was maybe jumping off the cliff. I thought getting carried away, you know, is something that happens to everyone. My development is a little bit behind in this position. The typical h5 is a trendy kind of idea. I mean, you see it a lot in the Najdorf. Yes, this is a good try. And I have the option to sack a pawn here. King e7, queen takes, bishop d7. Queen runs away, rook g8. You know, what would Igor Novikov do? I don't know, man. What's the best way to sack the pawn, though? I can just play king f8. No, king e7 looks crazy. Oh, no. Okay, this was a mouse slip. Maybe it's a good move, but it's a very big mouse slip. No, I just totally mouse slipped that. Just dropped a pawn. I touched the rook and it made me castle. What is that? That was so bizarre. I would never castle in that position. But it was a very strange mouse slip. It just automatically made me castle. It's totally strange. So he decided to trade queens. I'm not sure that was his best or not, but it looks pretty good, you have to admit. He's like a clear pawn up here. He could have taken the other way on h5. But this was not the plan, guys. I did not intend to play castles kingside. I wanted to sacrifice a pawn, but not this way. But I can't resign. I mean, I'm down one pawn. We need to play on. Just because you lose one pawn, I will resign against Gata, and I have done that once before. But you know, it has to be a special player for me to just resign because I lost one pawn. A very special player. So if we get our pawn back, he should have doubled rooks to defend. Now we're fine. We were lucky. This was an epic game. Oh, good. Actually, to be perfectly honest, I think the constant change plays really well in the ending. He seems to have this tremendous natural sort of feel for the ending, and well, a few games that he's the few games that he's won have oftentimes been like endgame, which is interesting. I don't like putting my pawns on white squares, but I'm fixing his queen side here, so I think it's pretty much okay. All my pawns are on the wrong color, but I get my king to a tremendous square. That's the question. I mean, with this tremendous king position I have, well, I don't want to let him off the hook there. F6. He made the wrong play. He should have traded bishops with bishop f3, forced my king back to c6, and then even there I'm probably in the box. So misevaluated this king and pawn ending. It doesn't matter how many pawns he has here. I don't think it matters. I hope not. Getting my king back is the priority. If I was checkmating him, I guess not. Wait a minute. Yeah. Alright, I was lucky to survive the mouse slip. We were pretty much totally lost there. Chess bomb. What is that? Arena Gibraltar. Ah. So, yeah, chess bomb is cool. I like chess bomb. Alright, Corwin. I don't know what happened to the Ultimate Destroyer, but he's left us. So Corwin. I have to keep remembering we're playing unusual openings. That was kind of an epic game. We started with Queen A5, and then the mouse slip. I touched the rook, and it made me castle. What is this? Rook touching rook makes you castle. Maybe I just thought I touched the rook and I had really moved the king in the castling motion by accident, but that was bizarre. I was in shock when it made me castle kingside. Interesting game though. It was fun. So Corwin. What are we doing here to play something unusual? Not too many games against Corwin, so we can play without having played the same thing for 10 times, pretty much anything. The Latvian I played once on the stream. It's just so bad for black. St. George defense, my favorite. I played knight h6 once on the weird opening stream, but it's not a real opening. I try to keep it limited to real openings, not like just made up stuff. We can play the delayed St. George. Transposing to the delayed St. George with e6. That gives us a few different flexible options. Like I can play c5 instead of b5. Play knight c3. I mean, c5 is just a really bad Benoni. So I think I have to play b5 at this stage. Unless you want to play g6. But I don't like playing the straight up hippo with e6 so early. So the delayed St. George, he's put his knight on c3, which means sometimes we can kick the knight. Touching rook shouldn't make you castle. Yeah, triumphant. I must have like moved the king in a castling like motion or something. We'll have to get like a stop motion of that moment and see in the video later exactly what I did, because it just wasn't expected. Okay, now when I play white against the St. George, I'm usually playing with Queen e2. So his moves are totally normal, of course. Though c5 at some point might be good. It would transpose to a type of Sicilian if he lets me. Knight f6. I think I like c5 here. Because if d5 c4, is pretty imbalanced. You know, d5 looks like it looks like it kind of overextends. Playable, but it would be messy if he plays d5. There is a famous Karpov-Miles game where, in a similar type of situation, Karpov took on c5. It wasn't exactly this position, I'm pretty sure. My endgame technique is awesome. Well, I was just lucky. You know, your endgame technique isn't too bad yourself. But you had bishop f3 check, like winning the king and pawn endgame, probably. Maybe not, though. If my king is on c6, I can still set up like to play g5 on the queen side. That wasn't a good position for me, though, for sure. Knight f6 here, pawn takes pawn. I still think it's okay for black. This is a pretty bizarre situation where he's like played d5 and I've played c4. It should be pretty dynamic. Maybe white's still better. Although now I would think I'm winning the e4 pawn. Well, not winning it, it's a sacrifice, I guess. But I mean, the central pawn is still more valuable than anything else here. Problems, though. We do have some problem. Well, it's not that big a problem. I have to take this pawn. I mean, this is forced. Actually, it's kind of like a closed Sicilian. This sort of pawn sacrifice, like allowing b4, happens in the closed Sicilian sometimes, where white gives up the central pawn for counterplay, maybe weak squares. He also had bishop e3. Maybe can win an exchange or something with knight to b6. My biggest problem here is my knight on b8, you know, not being able to get into the game. Bishop d6, knight d6 is very awkward for black. I think I should maybe go back to f6, ironically. That may be too slow, though. The important thing is to eliminate this pawn on d5. I mean, that's got to go. It's preventing me from getting my pieces out. And if he opts for something crazy like d6, I could probably surround that pawn. Played bishop g5. The most troublesome move. And now this d6 is a real problem. I guess I have queen a5 in some lines. Playing the Blumenfeld on a regular basis helps prepare one for this irrational kind of situation. I'm not allergic to doubled pawns on f6. In fact, I quite like playing those kind of structures. So that's not really an issue. In the meantime, his knight is hanging and needs a little help. So it's not so easy. Complicated. I think the best teacher for endgame is experience. But I think a lot of times the people ignore the endgame, learning the endgame. The Russians study it first. You know, the classic whatever, you know, Soviet era training program for chess players is to teach kids endgame first. I think there's a lot to be said for that. Most people leave it till last, but not the way it should be done, probably. Endgame is very fundamental. Okay, so G takes f6. Your knight is hanging, that's the problem. You have to address that. So you have c3 or b3 or bishop b3. Problem with my position, like in many lines of the Blumenfeld, this knight on b8 can't get into the game. But that's why I'm fighting so hard to try to eliminate his center on d5. But I'm not sure I want to play bishop takes d5 and let him annihilate my structure entirely. So let's see what other options we have at our disposal. Just difficult to find a useful move in the interim. I mean, sometimes in the Blumenfeld, like the knight goes out to a6, we obviously don't have that available as well. Pawn takes pawn just destroys my structure entirely. My king would get trapped in the center. So I would prefer not to go that route. Queen c7. Not developing anything. We have some real issues here, but I think we should try to castle. Okay, it's a 5-5 game. There's really no time for too much depth of thought. I'm deciding to castle kingside. Trying to castle kingside and resolve the rest of the mess later. Resolve the queenside later. Maybe I can take the bishop on d5, but I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do a capture on d5 while my king is still in the center of the board. We can try to castle kingside and play f5 or something. And our king is actually reasonably safe in most situations because he doesn't have a dark squared bishop on the board. We can play f5 to kind of block any threats and open up our bishop. So this is the plan. He's just really low on time. Guess I have to take. I'm on his bishop. My queen has retreat squares at the moment. Not the greatest of retreat squares. But we are getting out of here. So, not too many retreat squares available. One of the tricks, though, in these type of positions is, where do I want to go here? Queen a5? Or just queen e7? This looks pretty ugly, I have to admit. There's also knight b6. Maybe it's best not to allow knight b6. He has knight c5. Rook a7. What else? We got bishop a8, and we can hang on. Queen a4. Wow, like ultra positional approach. Okay. We can be flexible, move back and forth. we unpin our rook here? Or what do you want to do? Tough position. He's got a threat of b5. Maybe rook c8. That's kind of logical. Getting all the pieces in the game. He lost on time. I mean, it's a mess. I think white's still probably better, but not that much. You know, we're starting to get counterplay. There's doubling up on the file. F5 is coming, and we got out of it more or less. We were clearly worse. Raging Tiger 5-5. Let's play e4 and try to get in some kind of d6 though. You know, is very double-edged, Blue Crow, because it opens up my bishop on b7. But if you're saying, you know, there may be some situation where we can do that. Now he played c5. I was hoping to play like a King's Gambit after e4, but clearly there's no King's Gambit here. What can we play to keep things in the realm of offbeat openings? Very little surprises left. Very few surprises left against the Sicilian. Maybe we'll play g3. I haven't played this. I don't think I've played this ever on the stream. There was this guy Boris Men who was in a really strong FIDE master in the US, like rated over 2,500. He played it against me once. I don't know if that guy's still even alive. Okay, Raging Tiger, it's 5-5, so we got to play quickly. Okay, well, it's kind of like a 92 variation as well. And maybe c3, go for the big clamp. I'm not a specialist in any sort of closed Sicilians, so we're on our own. I think I did play knight 92 once in a while. I also played knight a3 before on move 2. Raging Tiger going into pretty classic Botvinnik type of pawn formation. And we can play d4 here. I'm not sure what the word is on the street about d4, but it certainly looks like interesting. Pretty aggressive to play d4 right away, but he's committed to e5 and c5, so what I'm doing is like challenging his strong point, you know, like essentially the basis of his entire position. It's kind of like trying to play e4 against the Dutch. If you're going to go to all this trouble to play like knight c6, c5, e5, if I can achieve d4, I'm just trying to refute your setup entirely, in essence. So it's certainly viable for white. White has something here. Yeah, all these openings are like interrelated. Knight a3, knight e2, g3. They can be interchangeable. But the thing is about g3, there was a variation that was very trendy for a while at that time when I played Boris Men. g3, d5, pawn takes d5, queen takes d5, and like knight f3, bishop g4, bishop g2, queen e6 check, king f1. I might have had a game against this guy who's a GM now from Peru, I think, Munoz Pantejo. He might have played g3 against me much, much later, and I forgot about that game. I didn't think that guy would get that strong, but he's solidly over 2,500. So bishop e7. Well, bishop g4, I was a little bit worried about that. Not that effectual here, though. We have a good square for the knight. That's a nice thing about this exchange on d4. He could consider bishop g4, trying to force me to play f3, but it was maybe a little early there. Now maybe h3. Stopping bishop g4, keeping him bottled up. Now that my knight's got the c3, and I make sure I don't want him to get in d5 or something like that, so I wanted to wait. He's playing this exchange. Structurally, white is better. You know, he's got the static weakness on d6, so this is what we're looking for here. And I like our game. Just structure advantage for white. Several different setups we can choose from. I'm not like playing for a big kingside attack at the moment. I'm just thinking about maintaining my control of d5 and maintaining that this pawn will remain a weakness on d6. Knight on e5, that's nice, but it's not going to stay there. You know, I'm going to kick it out eventually with f4. I could have played f4 right away, but it seemed a little early, honestly. I don't want to get carried away. a6, f4. Bishop e3. That's the question, though. Do I want to develop with bishop e3 and allow him to play like knight c4? Do I want to play b3, bishop b2? And he's trying to fianchetto. It looks like he's trying to counter fianchetto. Fianchetto, fianchetto, tomato, tomato. I don't know how I'm supposed to pronounce it, I guess. Fianchetto. So a6, yeah. There are certain drawbacks to black's position. f4, knight c6, or f4. I like f4, actually. I mean, why not? And where are you going to put the knight? This is a bad square. Knight d7 is passive, but maybe not so horrible. Knight c4, it's just going to get kicked again to another bad square over here. So you make the call. Knight c6, probably that's like the best move, actually, on a fundamental level. I'm not sure that's what he intended, but you know, it seems like he just wasted time. And also, he's remaining with this backward pawn. Just no justification for that weakness. Tomato opening. Okay, interesting move, bishop e6. Daring me to take this. That bishop I talk about all the time. It's a kind of problematic piece, often. Could almost win material, but knight takes e6, queen b3. I don't really like fixing his structure. Not entirely fixing it, but repairing it to some degree. But I am running out of time, so let's keep it simple. We have two bishops in an open position, and he's on the verge of losing material. I mean, he's just barely holding it together here. Maybe I can win a pawn with f5, or at least make his life a living hell. Very nasty play for white. If he puts the queen on d7, it's like, welcome to rook d1. Here he's got the same problem along the c file. So I think no matter what black does, it's a very, very unpleasant position. Maybe not. You had one shot there on knight a5, and then I have to play queen b4. It would have been complicated. Now he didn't do it, and I have time to play knight a4, which I think leaves me with with a clear advantage. That chance to play knight a5 may have been your last. There's still time problems, but not going to give him any more chances. The b6 square is massive. That will stop b5 and just bind him up completely. He has he might be able to play like bishop d8, but it's really ugly. This kind of open position is pretty ideal for the bishops. It's an imbalanced pawn structure, open lines. Bishop d8, rook d1. He has more problems. This is just falling apart. Discoveries. I can force a trade of queens with bishop b6. No, he has the queen b8. Just knight b6. Keeping him tied up. He has some counterplay with bishop f8, though. I'm on his rook with tempo. That's no time to play discoveries. So he has to play rook d8. He's just completely lost strategically and materially with the pawn down. If he had seen knight a5 in time, this move isn't as good because his queen doesn't have the retreat square. I don't think it's as good to leave himself without that retreat square. Queen b3. It doesn't really matter, queen c4. I think it doesn't matter, queen c4, queen d3. Maybe rook b8 isn't so bad, though, in reality. Maybe not. Because he comes back to d8, and the queen is at least in the center of the board. It's the only place to go. Bishop f8. Yep. Maybe I could have played knight d5. I could still play it. I don't know what it does, though. You know, I see he's going to build up in this position. Wow, he actually has that. Maybe the time is right for this. Forced me to do it. And then, I don't know, queen takes is better. No counterplay. No counterplay against that e4 pawn. He would have had queen e7 and massive pressure on e4. Now it's all gone. No threatening my e4 pawn. Not seriously. Pawn takes queen e7, and I wasn't convinced, you know, I have anything there. That's why I rejected taking with the pawn. Looks like Raging Tigers. Like About Time. I've only played him twice. I don't recall his style. Really? But it looks like he's trying to flag me. Don't blame him. He is clearly worse pawn down. His best chance is to win on time. It's going to be hard to take me out in the positional sense here. To play d5, but then I play e5. So it's pretty bad. Bad bishop, white square weaknesses, no counterplay. I hope he's not thinking of g5. I don't think so. He's just making a breathing hole for his king. Eventually I could play h4 around here somewhere. He's managed to find a plan. You know, he's got a good square for the knight on c4. Something that did crop up earlier. An h4 again, or bishop f3. This is no-brainer. This white square bishop is strong, though it's blocked right now. It has a lot of potential. Do I want to play e5 or not? Yeah, probably. But I have f5 here. That is too much. I'd rather not trade queens. But you can't have everything. It's good enough. All right. Guys, we have time for at least 2 more games. Thank you for the game, Raging Tiger. Last 2 games look like M47 and 1 question IQ test. I already played Epithetos. Chess Kudo, I haven't seen you in a long time, man. Knight F3. Another thing I can do is turn off takebacks. Turn on takebacks, turn off takebacks. In order for there to be a takeback... Okay, he played the Dutch defense. This is an interesting line. Not very typical. D3 against the Dutch. And we might get a good gambit here. So I'm hoping... This is a form of Lisicin gambit. And can be quite good for white. E4, E5, F3. That's too trashy to play, I think. Where does it come up with this name, the King's Head opening? I remember there was, in London, there was a pub where they used to play chess. Wasn't it? Why do I have this feeling like I know a pub in London called the King's Head or something? Maybe when I was there, I visited some place called the King's Head Pub. I don't know if any of you guys are from London. What's the next top level? How do I move stuff, man? Yeah. I don't know if that's a joke or if he's serious, but I'm gonna ban him no matter what. Pawn takes f5 or e5, and I never really know which I like better in this position. I don't like d6 that much, but what is he supposed to play? Actually, I mean, that's the quandary here for black. What is black supposed to play in this position? I don't know. Pawn takes f5 or e5. Both are interesting. I've played both, and I don't really know which one I like better. It's kind of funny. Probably pawn takes f5. I like the plans better with this. What did he say? Are you really for real, man? It's not what he said, you know. But anybody with a mass murderer in their name is going to get banned from the room. D4. Not to say I love Donald Trump or anything, but I wouldn't ban someone for being called Trump something, you know. D4 is the plan of trading the white squared bishops here. And that's the whole idea. He's got a lot of pawns on dark squares. And now bishop g4. This m4-7. I don't know. Maybe he hasn't played in a while. This is a strange move, man. Your white squared bishop it's already in question. I can't believe you can move it again here. It seems counterintuitive to spend another tempo moving this white squared bishop. Okay, there's a lot of ideas. Are you that ignorant? Are you guys that ignorant? Really? You don't know, like, you didn't like watch the news for the last 10 years or anything. All right. Bishop g4. We've had a troll, a neo-Nazi troll here. Okay, he's a big fan of a Norwegian mass murderer. So this person is going to get banned just for having like a neo-Nazi mass murderer as the name of their Twitch handle. That's enough for me. It doesn't really matter what he says, you know. It's a troll who's been trolling my stream for the whole past year, and I think that's enough reason to ban them. Okay, bishop e2. But I don't know, you may disagree. You may think that's cool, you know, to have neo-Nazi mass murderer heroes, but we're not going to be really down with that. As long as he says nice things, you know, it's okay. Man, I don't know what to play here. Bishop e2. Queen d3 is another interesting possibility. Let's try that. Something original. Maybe I can castle queenside. Queen d3 gets out of the pin. It allows castling queenside. There's play on the white squares. There's tactics on the white squares. It's funny, triumphant. I try to avoid politics completely here in the stream, but I wouldn't have associated your name, you know, with anything other than being triumphant. So I think you see what you're looking for. You know, that's the thing. I mean, people will see what they're looking for. If you constantly focus on politics, you're probably going to see politics wherever you look, you know. A lot of people are paranoid too, so. c6. Bishop g5 is interesting here. He did defend against queen b5 check. He also has queen b6. If I play something like bishop g5, he might have some counterplay with queen b6. This is surprising that he can spend the tempo on bishop g4 and not be that much worse. And then it's almost like my queen d3 could play into his hands. Later on he can gain time on my queen. I don't know what to do. Sack a pawn. Maybe play bishop g5 anyway. If I have to sack a pawn, I'll sack a pawn. Anyway, the guy is just a troll who's been trolling me for a long time, so I thought there was like a tiny 1% chance it was someone just being funny, but I don't think so. It's pretty unlikely. So guys, we have 2 games left. This one and one more against Epithetos. No, I told Epithetos I didn't want to play 2 games with the same player on the stream unless there's like no other challenges. So you can't just like play and then like play another game because you got in line first. It's just too many people that want to play. So Bishop G5 here. I thought that black goes full psycho with Queen B6 and let me sack a pawn. Queen B6, Knight D2, Queen takes B2, Rook B1, Rook takes B7 with compensation for material would be my evaluation there. But I don't really like sacking this pawn, you know, but I like it better than playing passively. Black's position has certain benefits. I mean, he has central pawns and control of the E5 square. My E4 pawn is gone. He undermined my E4 pawn. Basically, he's traded F toward E, and that is an exchange toward the center. He did not play Queen B6, though, which I thought was objectively best. But risky to play something like Queen B6, Queen takes B2, of course. But it's risky to play the Dutch in the first place. So yeah, if it was a troll, it's not very funny. It is a troll, but what kind of troll? I know where our moderator is. Jeroen has been absent for 2 days. I'm going to have to see if he's okay. Queen A5 now. Are you thinking about castling queenside? You're just going to win a piece here. It's a tricky move to try to win a piece. Like bishop takes F3, queen takes here. He also has Queen F5. So I was thinking about Knight C4. That's illegal. He's threatening to win a piece. So I guess I have to play C3. This is getting really weird. It's getting weirder and weirder all the time, this game. I've played M47. Oh, this is a new account. No, it's not a new account. He just doesn't have rated games. Okay. He's played me a lot of games. I'm crazy. Like, all the games are right here. I'm like, oh, it's a new account. Yeah. 23 to 4.5 new account. I don't know, M47 has multiple accounts. I don't really like people having multiple accounts, but I'm not the chess police, so I don't like the fact that there are too many players with too many multiple accounts here on lichess. I mean, a lot of them are using them in kind of controversial ways, like cheating, but just in general, it's just too easy to create a new account every week. My queen is on the wrong square here. All right, let's back it off. My queen is too exposed. I'm just constantly getting harassed by bishop F5. My bishop has nowhere to go. So I think this whole plan of playing like Queen D3 is pretty questionable in reality. I did not make it work. It looks like it was a fail. Could I play B3? Yeah, but it's so weakening. Anytime you're in that kind of situation where somebody plays Queen B3 or Queen B6 attacking your pawn on B7, 95% of the time B3 or B6 is not a good answer. Just as a kind of rule of thumb. It's better to defend it with a piece in most cases, and if you can't do that, sometimes you can sacrifice it for initiative. The last resort is to move the pawn, which usually weakens the structure. That'd be my advice. So now we're getting somewhere. Developmentally, almost caught up. And both sides are probably going to castle kingside. I could castle queenside. I don't normally do that, though. I like my position from a strategic sense. I think he's backward along the e-file. And in that sense, because of that, I don't really want to take any risks here, you know. I can take risks, and sometimes I like to, but in general, I don't think it's a good idea to take risks when you don't need to. So, structurally, he has a backward pawn on the e-file. Now he's castling long. Maybe I talked him out of it with bishop d3. I don't know, but should I castle kingside? Now he could try to attack me on the king side. I don't know. I don't like pinning myself. I don't like. If now I can unleash like a queenside pawn storm against him. Come to think of it, I think I have the stronger attack, and ultimately easier for me to attack him. He can attack me though too with the same kind of pawn storm. Though he has problems with the g6 pawn. Like he can't play h6 without dropping his g6 pawn straight up. I'm not sure if he wants to do that. Maybe he could play it as a pawn sacrifice. No, here comes e5. Thematic. I'll try to. Oh, he's gonna take with the queen. Maybe I should play b4. Minimal weakening, and we can force him to have an isolated pawn. This furthers my queenside expansion plan. He can't recapture with pieces, which was probably what he intended. Like knight takes e5. Queen takes e5 when it's not that bad for black. So after everything's said and done, we have some kind of technical advantage. I don't see any tactics. Still, black remains fairly solid through everything. Kind of hard to get out of the pin. Maybe rook f8. Oh, bishop there. Did not see that possibility. Not good to hover the mouse over the resign button. After my luck with the misclick earlier, the misclick castle was pretty gross. Wow. Awkward pin. We could just play anything. Well, rook takes d3 is some sort of threat, so. Alright, we'll give up the I don't want to draw. So we've got to play for some kind of an attack. I don't have to trade all the pieces just because it's opposite colored bishops. Opposite colored bishop positions are favorable for the side with the well, this is just is that a mouse slip? M4-7, why would you play that? Well, kind of a weird mouse slip. Alright, man, no, this is a tough game. In final position, if we analyze it for a second, I don't think a white's advantage is that big, like half a pawn. Yeah, obviously here. Half a pawn. Computer thinks it's even less. It's close, though. My stockfish is on 0.4, 0.3. Yeah. I mean, white has a very good position, but it's going to be hard to win. I guess did you mean to play rook d5? Ironically, I don't think so. That's a random move. That's what the computer wants to play, rook d5. I wouldn't ever imagine that move. Alright. Doubling rooks, though. That's the only way to double the rooks. I guess you could play rook d7 though. Rook d5. King b8 is a normal move. And for 7. Epithetos, I'm not going to play you again today. Come back tomorrow. DST says, what's worse, people have multiple accounts or having one account, having multiple playing on one account, obviously. I mean, dude, I come from playing online poker, you know, so online accounts, you know, multiple accounting is a huge problem in online poker. So we are playing our last game today on the stream. Busy day. Wednesday is usually tough for me. Let's play e4 and see what we can get. Seems like I had an awful lot of games with white today. Yeah, I wanted to play a King's Gambit, so we get our chance. I'll play f4, Wormius. I think I prefer f4 to f3. Adiban, the most recent high-level King's Gambit. Surprising Wesley So. Maybe bishop c4. That's what Adiban played, right? He played bishop c4, didn't he? Now d6. Kind of a neutral move. Non-confrontational. Want to get into like a Fischer variation or something? If I played knight f3, then like g5 would transpose to a Fischer variation of some type. d6 and g5. I don't know. I don't know the theory, guys. I mean, I don't really play the King's Gambit. I just play it for fun, you know. I'm not... I always wanted to, but just never really got around to it. But I have played the King's Gambit in Blitz occasionally since I actually was attracted to it when I was even like 1600. I did regularly play it against friends when I was an amateur. So it's not I'm just not doing it just because of the stream. I think it's a good opening and very, very fundamental. It's an excellent opening in terms of fundamental logic. I mean, f4, undermining the center, this is so key. I would think the King's Gambit would be an awesome weapon if you played it below master level and really, really understood it deeply. I bet like an expert King's Gambit player in amateur level tournaments would just rake in the points, because nobody knows how to play against the King's Gambit below master level. I mean, very, very few. Now, it's really like a strategic opening. I mean, in a sense, it can get like exceptionally tactical in some lines, but extremely strategic basis. So here, the problem, I think, is this bishop. How is my bishop going to play without undermining that pawn chain? We have to break up the black pawn chain in order for the rest of my pieces to play in this game. So h4. h4 looks awesome, no? It's like a Queen's Gambit on the other side of the board. Sellsword. Zarathustra. I really do not see any problem with multiple accounts. Well, you know, guns don't kill people, people kill people, right? I mean, it's not really the multiple accounts that are the problem, it's like what people do with them. Of course, you can have multiple accounts and be perfectly innocent, but it creates the potential for disaster. That's the problem. G4, what a move. I don't have to take it right away. If I take it right away, I probably should. He can get a little bit of counterplay. Like, I'll be backward, essentially, on this file. That's an interesting solution, one question IQ test, to do it this way. It's tempting to play like d3 and try to just capture the pawn there with the bishop. Maybe that's the best. I mean, I don't have to take this straight up. Maybe I'd rather get this pawn. You know, one of them is going to fall, and it's just a question of what circumstances. It's just a question of under what circumstances, you know, we get it. So we do it this way. We could also go after this guy with a knight. You know, maybe that's best. No, there I think we have problems now. Knight e2 is nice. It would be nice to take the pawn, but he's got bishop e7 and bishop takes h4 check, which gets a little messy. So I think I'm obliged to take this way. And black may be okay here. White's position is strategically wholesome. I can play g3, guarding my pawn. And we have a file. Half open a file. There's always something I mention is the advantage of doubled pawns is that every time you have a doubled pawn, you have a half open file that the other guy doesn't have, you know, so there is this built-in compensation that comes along with doubled pawns. Bishop h6. I'm cool with that, man, just as long as we exchange on my terms. Actually, queen d2 or knight f4. Either way is good. But I want to exchange pieces on my terms, not on his terms. Don't bring his pieces out for him. Let him bring my pieces to better positions. You know, it's not the same. This rook file, we could get that guy in the game. Oh, you stopped me. You stopped me cold, but g3 at some point would be risky now because of knight e5 and some knight f3 sort of nastiness. Can't castle without dropping my pawn. Can't play g3 without weakening the f3 square, so it's kind of awkward. Could castle and then we could castle and meet knight e5 with bishop takes e5. We can't castle though. We could play g3 and meet knight e5 with bishop takes e5. We could play queen d2. It's probably the most fluid move. Not weakening our structure, just developing. Got the option to castle queenside here as well. You guys, I highly recommend you study games from the old masters, like 100 years ago. Karl Schlechter. He was an awesome positional player. And, of course, the King's Gambit was fashionable in his time. This is a guy who almost, like, got the world championship. He played the King's Gambit, you know. The King's Gambit is not just like a wild tactical opening. It's actually dangerous in the hands of a strong strategic player. Here, our advantage is completely strategic. I mean, we have f-file, kind of backwardness for black. Now we can castle kingside. Then knight e5 is interesting. Knight g3. Knight g3. Do I allow... he's thinking of castling queenside. If he's thinking of castling queenside, maybe we don't castle queenside, so we exploit the a file for our rook. We castle kingside, or we play like knight g3 here. Knight g3, knight d4, I'm a little bit worried about. You can play knight to d5. King's Gambit's not that weird. Well, I'm not playing trash openings. The King's Gambit's weird for me, man. I never ever play the King's Gambit in a tournament game. Sorochi says, oh, sorry, I have a cold. For some reason got locked out of my account. You got locked out of your account? You mean like on lichess or Twitch? Well, obviously your doctor locked you out of your account to keep you from killing yourself. Maybe d4. I'm going to lose on time. Wow. I'm not sure about this. He can't keep the tension here forever. I mean, is he going to just keep the tension forever and not develop his knight or anything? I was talking about knight d4 earlier, but he cannot do that, you know, and drop the a7 pawn. Now he goes bishop g7. And I like my game. But we're getting kind of low on time. This is our last game for today, guys. Jeroen, thanks for showing up after all, though, to let us know. Welcome, everyone. Little Pingwing, DST. I've been kind of busy playing today to say hello to everybody. I'm in time pressure every single game, of course. Not the best move by me. We do have a massive attack on the queen side. There were better ways to play this position for white, I'm quite sure. But it was dangerous for black to castle into it. Now I've guarded my my b2 pawn. This should have been played last move, obviously. Just not that accustomed to this position. But, I mean, the theme is universal. Should have played last move. This combination. It's not necessarily forced mate, but very, very bad for black. This is mate, though. I guess he has to run away with the king right away. I have the low disk space message again. All right, guys, I'm gonna get offline and correct that issue right away, so we don't have any more streaming problems. Well, thank you. One question IQ test was an interesting opening. I gave you 2 chances to play a6 there. What is that? Oh, it's not Soroche, it's a troll. I see. Sorry, guys, this is the troll. But you should never ever click on a link in the stream. Okay? This is the troll that I banned earlier. Never ever click in it. Never ever click any links that people put into the stream. You guys have to be very, very aware. I was asleep to switch too, believing that this was really a person I knew. So no matter what you do, though, I prefer that anyone doesn't put links in the stream. Did not see that the link was being posted. So we will be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. CET. And thanks, and sorry for the troll today, but that's something we have to live with, unfortunately. Thank God my spider senses were on point. Yeah, well, it's a problem with the neo-Nazi troll there. So we will be back tomorrow, and feel free to report anybody for bad behavior here on the stream to Twitch, but it doesn't seem to do any good. We can't seem to get them to ban people's ISPs. So in the future, never ever click on any links unless it's like put there by me personally, or someone with a moderator functionality here on the stream. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye bye.